So as we flee to the heart of Jesus by looking at St. Joseph, we'd like to introduce our first keynote talk of the conference. And the keynote title is St. Joseph, Protector of the Church. A little over 25 years ago, Alan Hunt left his job in management consulting firm on Wall Street to answer God's call to ministry and to become a pastor. He received a Master of Divinity from Emory University, a PhD in the New Testament and Ancient Studies from Yale University. He faithfully pastored Methodist churches for 20 years and eventually became the senior pastor of a megachurch, one of the largest Methodist congregations in the USA. But there was a longing that eventually, he says, he could no longer ignore. His search for truth and a deeper relationship with Jesus Christ brought him to another life-changing decision. He would step down as senior pastor and convert to Catholicism. Dr. Alan Hunt's story is definitely a compelling one. He's a best-selling author. He's a speaker that now partners with Matthew Kelly at the Dynamic Catholic Institute, and he and his wife Anita share over 30 years of marriage, 2 beautiful grown married daughters, and 6 beautiful grandchildren. So please join me in welcoming to Baton Rouge and to the Men of the Immaculata Conference, Dr. Alan Hunt. Welcome.
Thank you, Father. Well, good morning. Signs of life are appreciated. Good morning. Well done. 6 beautiful grandchildren, Father Chris said. I would say probably 4 of them are beautiful, 2 of them are above average. And we have a 7th one coming on the way we just found out this week. So it's good to be with you, with my wife Anita in the back. We love Baton Rouge. We've been here many, many times, including here at St. George just a year ago. It was my last live event. So if I'm a little rusty today, you'll forgive me. Because of COVID, haven't done any live speaking since being here leading a marriage event last February or March before all the shutdown. I like to start with something that you're probably very familiar with, and that's that when the leader says God is good. When the leader says God is good, the men say all the time. Now, if we were in Haiti today, oftentimes the leader will say God is sweet. And the men will respond, So let's try that, shall we? God is sweet. Amen. Today I wanted to talk, not because I'm an NBA fan, but for other reasons, about pelicans. I want to talk about pelicans. My daughter is married to a Navy guy, and they just moved about a month ago to Monterey, California, to the naval station there. And Monterey, as you know, Monterey and Carmel are known for their pelicans. And so pelicans are kind of their tourism logo. It's their brand, if you will. The Chamber of Commerce uses it to attract people. People come from all over the world to check out their pelicans in Monterey and Carmel. A few decades ago, the pelican population began to die off. And it was shrinking every year. And so the Chamber of Commerce and the government got together and said, we've got to figure this out. What's going on? And so they called in some pelican experts, people that I call pelicanologists, and to come in, and they said, can you help us figure out what's going on with our pelican population? And so those scientists came and they studied the pelicans, and they came back to that group of people, that group of government leaders and Chamber of Commerce leaders, and they said, we figured out what's the matter with your pelicans. What's happened is that your pelicans, for many, many years here in Monterey, the big industry has been fishing. And every day, scores of boats go out to sea, they catch fish, they come back at the end of the day, and your pelicans would swoop down onto the decks of those boats and steal a fish and eat that night. But what happened over the last 20 to 30 years is that the fishing industry in Monterey and Carmel has shrunk considerably, and so there's only a handful of boats that go out every day and only a handful of boats that come back, and so there's only a handful of boats that those pelicans could come down and steal fish off at the end of the day to eat their dinner that night, and slowly over the years your pelicans died off because your pelicans unfortunately had forgotten how to fish. Get it? They'd forgotten how to fish. And so the Chamber of Commerce said, what do we do? And they said, well, we're going to go off to some other places around the world. We're going to gather up some healthy pelicans. We're going to bring those pelicans in to reintroduce, to help your pelicans rediscover how to fish. And that's what they did to rebuild the population of pelicans in Monterey and Carmel. They'd forgotten how to fish. They'd forgotten how to fish. As Father Chris said, I was a Methodist pastor for 20 years, and I've been Catholic now for, 13 years. And one of the things that has struck me since I became Catholic was that I'm afraid as I look, and I don't think this is anything controversial, I mean, we talked about it at Mass last night, that over the last 100 to 200 years in America, I think as Catholics, we've forgotten how to fish. We got used to being able to have immigration bring us new Catholics, and eight kids in a family bring us new Catholics, and marriage bring us new Catholics, and now none of those streams are filled with fish. And we've forgotten how to fish. And then we have COVID set in, and people are scared, and people are worried about going out into public, and our churches have had to adapt to that and have to go to virtual, and we're concerned what happens when the society begins to loosen back up, and people are asking the wrong question. They're going to say, are we ready when the people come back? That's the wrong question. The question is, how are we going to get them back? We're not going to magically reopen society and all of a sudden people are going to fill the pews. There's a lot of folks whose habit has been broken. And you and I have the opportunity, through the intercession and the help of St. Joseph today, to remember how to fish. This is a problem that's been going on for a long time, well before COVID, but the time has come, gentlemen, for us to quit playing defense. We've gotten used to playing defense, we've gotten used to being timid, we've gotten used to the anti-Catholicism, we've gotten used to people questioning our faith and telling us that we're anti-science, we've gotten used to people wondering why we do the things that we do as Catholics, and we've played defense for a long time, and now's the time for offense. Now's the time for us to go into society and share the good news, because the beautiful thing about the faith is meant to be shared. The faith is meant to be shared, and you and I have a marvelous word and marvelous words and marvelous experiences to share with the culture. And so for the last 3 popes, they've given us this opportunity, what they call the new evangelization. And everybody's talked about the new evangelization, and we've studied the new evangelization, and some of us have learned how to spell new evangelization, but nobody knows what the new evangelization is, because we go, what does that mean? Faith sharing? I mean, at Dynamic Catholic, where I partner with Matthew, as Father Chris just mentioned, we did 2,978 one-on-one interviews studying Dynamic Catholics, and we asked every single one of those people, men and women across the whole country, are you an evangelist? And almost every single one of them said, no, I'm Catholic. We don't do that. Because when we think about evangelization, we think about getting on a bike and wearing a suit and going door to door with somebody who looks just like us and knocking on doors and handing people tracts. We think about standing outside the LSU game with a megaphone and yelling at people. We think about talking to strangers and cold calls. We're intimidated by evangelization. We're intimidated by sharing the faith. We're intimidated, we study it, we worry about it, and we shrink back and we play defense rather than offense. And we say, well, the bishop ought to do something about that. The priest ought to do something about that. When St. Joseph was neither a priest nor a bishop, he was a regular guy like you and me. And he lived out the faith in a way that is still drawing countless thousands to him. And so today I want us to talk a little bit about that because I've got a simple definition. I've got a simple definition of evangelization that every single person in the United States can understand. It hasn't been produced by a big synod. It hasn't been produced by a big conference or a big council or a big committee. It hasn't been put into a 5,000-page tome in multi-sets. It's a very simple definition of evangelization. Here it comes. My definition of evangelization is this. Evangelization is one beggar telling another beggar where to find bread. Evangelization is one beggar telling another beggar where to find bread. My brother's got multiple sclerosis. Your brother's got multiple sclerosis. Can I share with you a little bit about how our faith has helped us to cope with that? I know your wife is sick with cancer. My first wife died of cancer. Can I share with you a little bit about how our faith has kind of helped us through that? Your son's in rehab again. My brother's been in and out of rehab his whole life. Can I share with you a little bit about how our faith has helped us through that? Evangelization is one beggar telling another beggar where to find bread. And in this culture that we live in, gentlemen, a culture that's growing increasingly anti-life, a culture that's growing increasingly dark, a culture that's growing increasingly cynical, a culture that's growing increasingly divided and hostile and polarized, has there ever been a time when one beggar needs to share with another beggar where to find the bread of hope, where to find the bread of life, where to find the bread of faith, where to find the bread of love than right now. Evangelization is one beggar telling another beggar where to find bread. And better yet, evangelization is based on the law of the harvest. And what I mean by that is that if you want more of something in your life, give it away. Give it away. Here's what I mean. If you say, Alan, I got a lot of grudges in my life, I got a lot of resentment in my life, I got a lot of unforgiveness in my life, start giving forgiveness away. Just start forgiving people indiscriminately. Forgive people in traffic. Forgive people who are Alabama fans. Forgive just people around you. Just begin to forgive them. As you begin to forgive people, watch what happens as the forgiveness begins to multiply back in your life. It cascades back in. It's the law of the harvest. If you want more of something, give it away. If you're one of those people that says, I feel unloved, I feel malnourished with love in my life, I feel lonely, I feel isolated, I don't feel like anybody cares, just start loving people. Start loving people all around you. Just start loving them, and watch what happens. As you give love away, you'll get more love back. It's the law of the harvest. If you want more love in your life, give it away. Now, let's say you're one of those people that we seem to be creating a lot of in the United States right now, and you've got a lot of hatred, and you say, I'd like to have more hatred in my life. I need me some more hatred. Start giving hatred away. Get you a Twitter account. Get you a Facebook account. Get you, if you can get one, get you a Parler account. Get you all those accounts. Get you all your social media and just start hating everybody and watch what happens. Hatred's going to come all over you. And if you're lucky enough, you'll get canceled altogether. Nobody will even know that you are. You'll have so much hatred. It'll be great. If you want more of something in your life, give it away. It's the law of the harvest. In the same way, if you come today to this time when we talk about the protector of the church, the pillar of the family, the terror of demons, and you say, I need more faith in my life. I need the faith of St. Joseph in my life. It's the same principle, guys. Start giving your faith away. You say, you know what, the Eucharist is the centerpiece of my faith. All right, go to your priest and say, Father, can I help teach kids First Communion? Can I introduce them to my love for the Eucharist? First of all, the priest, your priest, your pastor is going to be stunned. A man showing up to volunteer to teach First Communion. Yes! In fact, I'm going to go ahead and put you on the road to beatification. And what you'll discover is that as you're helping to coach kids and teach kids and inspire kids as they prepare for their First Communion, and you're sharing with them your love for the Eucharist, on that Sunday or that day when they have First Communion and the kids are lined around the altar and they're there in their beautiful little dresses and their very nice little jackets and coats, as they receive their First Communion, their parents are going to have tears in their eyes, but you're going to be weeping prodigiously because you're going to realize that those kids gave you more than you gave them. It's the law of the harvest. If you want more faith, give your faith away. You say, Alan, I've got a real heart of compassion, a real heart of faith for the poor. You know, I want to organize a mission team. Okay, organize a mission team. Go to Haiti, go to Costa Rica, go wherever you want to go. Go to your pastor and say, hey, can I organize 8 men? Can I organize 8 men? And maybe you'll take some women and children. Maybe you'll just go with 8 guys. We're going to take 8 guys. Can we go to Haiti and help build a church, or maybe help Father Louis Morozny with his orphanage and help him bring in street kids? Can we go? And what you'll do is you'll get on the plane and you'll be flying down to Haiti, and you're going to be on that plane. You're going to be so proud of yourself. You're going to go, oh man, I'm going to go help some kids. I'm going to give my faith away. And when you get on the plane to come back, you're going to be weeping. You're going to be weeping prodigiously because you're going to realize that those kids gave you more than you gave them. If you want more faith in your life, guys, give your faith away. It's the law of the harvest. Evangelization is one beggar telling another beggar where to find bread. It's the church playing offense. It's you and me going into the culture in the spirit of St. Joseph to help share a word of hope, a word of life, a word of faith, a word of love with the world. It's one beggar telling another where to find bread, and it's you and me giving our faith away so that we'll have more faith than ever before, because the faith, hear me, is meant to be shared. So today I want to walk you through a simple way to become somebody who shares your faith. And I'm not talking about going door to door. I'm not talking about standing outside the LSU game. Number one is I want you to close your eyes for just a second. I want you to close your eyes for just a second, and I want you to call to mind the face of one person in your life, not 3, not 5, not 10, one person who has either fallen away from the church or is asleep in the church or could use a solid injection of faith in their life right now. someone who needs a booster shot of faith right now. One person, somebody you know personally, someone you know, you care about, and you love. It might be your brother. It might be your son. It might be your mom. It might be your best friend. But I want you to think of just one, because we all have a number of them. Focus on just one right now and bring that face into your mind's eye. All right, open your eyes. What would happen? Easter is 6 weeks from tomorrow. We got 42 days, gentlemen. 42 days. What would happen if each day, for the next 42 days, each day from now until Easter, once we get to Easter, you can do whatever you want. But for the next 42 days, what would happen if each day, at the beginning of your day, you took 15 or 20 seconds and you said, Lord, I love Tommy very much, and I know you love him even more than I do. And he could really use a booster shot of faith, Lord, and I pray that you would bring that into his life. And if I could be an instrument in that, I pray, Lord, that you would use me to do that as well. Amen. Short, simple prayer, something like that. You can make the word yourself. You prayed for that one person who you just called to mind in your mind's eye, that one person who could use a booster shot of faith, somebody you personally know and love, because the odds are, guys, you're not going to bring anybody to faith who's a complete stranger to you. The person who's most likely to listen to you is somebody you know and love and care about, because most effective evangelization happens through friendship. It happens through friendship. Somebody that trusts you, somebody that knows you, somebody that agrees with you on about 97% of things. But that 3% where they're just not quite there on the faith, those are the people who are most likely to listen to you. So what would happen if for the next 42 days, just 42 days, it's only 6 weeks. Again, day after Easter, you can quit if you want. But for 42 days, you simply prayed for that one person you know and love who could use a booster shot of faith, an espresso of faith. Because evangelization begins with prayer. Number 2, begins with prayer. Second of all, faith is usually best shared with resources. Father Chris walked you through some of the things in your bag today. One of those is this book, Rediscover Jesus. Our team at Dynamic Catholic, some of you I know here today are ambassadors, and thank you for being Dynamic Catholic ambassadors. Our team at Dynamic Catholic donated these today for you so that each one of you could have one, because oftentimes the most effective way to share the faith is through sharing a resource. Saying, hey, here's something that helped me, I think it'll help you. Let me give you an example. About 3 years ago, I was in Fort Worth, Texas, speaking at a parish, and our host was a guy named Deacon Brian. Brian had organized that speaking event. He brought us together, me with my musician. We went out there for a half day, and at the end of the day, we couldn't get a flight home back to Atlanta until the next day, so we stayed and we had dinner with Brian and his wife. And I said, Brian, what's the story? How'd you end up hosting this event? And he said, well, how long you got? And I said, well, I'm not flying back till tomorrow. And he said, well, I think I can be done by then. He said, well, the weird thing is, Alan, I need to tell you the whole story. And I said, I'm all ears. You're buying dinner. I'll be patient and listen. He said, my wife and I were from Canada. And a number of years ago, we realized that we really wanted to spend our life raising horses. So we moved from Canada to just outside Fort Worth here, where you were today. And we bought a little piece of property, and we bought our first horse. And over the years, we've grown it into the horse ranch that you saw today. He said, well, when we moved here from Canada, we're Catholic, and when we moved here, we thought, we need to find a parish, and it'd be good for us to be connected to a parish. So we moved to Fort Worth, we got settled, and the first Sunday we were here, we found the church, the parish that you were at today, and we went so that we could be in the nearest parish. And we got there 20 minutes early because we are highly committed to getting there early enough to be able to be on the last pew on the corner by the aisle. We were not going to let anybody get that seat before us. We were not sitting on the next to last pew. So we got there 20 minutes early, and we were the first people there, and so we sat in the back pew on the corner there, on the aisle, back where Warren Dazio is, where you can usually find him, as a matter of fact, there on the last row. And we sat down, and about 2 minutes later, another couple came in, and they were highly committed, but not as committed as we were. So they had to sit on the next to last pew. And so they sat in front of us, and we're Catholic. We didn't introduce ourselves or anything. We were 18 minutes ahead, and so we just sat there quietly. And he said, for the next 15, 16 years, every Sunday, he said, I'm not exaggerating, every single Sunday for about 16 years, we got to Mass 20 minutes early, and my wife and I, we sat in that last pew. And every week for 15 or 16 years, 2 minutes later, that same couple would come in and they'd sit right in front of us. So we're about 16 years into that habit, and it comes to the time in Mass when the deacon says to share the peace, share the peace with one another. And so on this Sunday, about 16 years in, the fellow turns around to him and he says, hey, my name's Tom. Brian said, whoa, babe, I've been sitting behind you for 16 years. I'm not sure that I'm ready to take this relationship to the next level. I don't really need to know your name. This is church. We're Catholic. We don't do that. We don't need to be on a first name basis. But he said, I didn't want to be rude, so I just said, hey, my name's Brian. Then I turned away. And nothing else happened. We didn't become good buddies. We didn't barbecue together. We didn't go fishing together. We didn't begin to play golf together. We didn't vacation together. I knew his name. He knew mine. That was enough for me. So about 3 years went by, and we're about 19 years into this relationship. 19 years in, and it's Sunday Mass, and we come to Mass that week, and my wife and I get there 20 minutes early, and we sit on the last pew, and 2 minutes later, Tom and his wife, whose name I still didn't know and frankly didn't want to know, sat in the pew right in front of us. Comes to the end of Mass, and we say, thanks be to God, go in peace to love and serve the Lord, thanks be to God. And we begin, the last song starts, and that's our cue to get out. That's why we're on the last pew, so we can be out before the priest even gets to the back of the church. I can be out there, and because I'm there early, I'm in the pole position in the parking lot, and I pull all the way through. I ain't backing out, man. I pulled it, so I can just pull right into the street. I'm like Danica Patrick, just straight out of that parking lot, pow! And so they say, thanks be to God. And so my wife and I begin to walk out there, and as soon as we walk out, Tom turns around, and he says, hey, Brian. And Brian said, and I turned around, and he said, I don't know why I did. It was a huge mistake. I turned around and said, yeah? And Tom said, hey, would you and your wife maybe like to go grab lunch with my wife and me after Mass today? And Tom said, I was so freaked out by that, but before I could say no, my wife behind me says, sure, we'd love to. And I go, what are you doing? Stop! Make it stop! Oh my gosh, who does this? And so I said, yeah, we'll go, but we're going to go to like Wendy's or something, so we can just go in, order, eat, and be out in 20 minutes. And so we went and we had our little sandwich with him, and we got in the car, and we're on our way home. And I said, sweetie, what were you thinking? Why did you do that? And she said, well, I thought we've been in this parish 19 years. It's probably good for us to know at least somebody's name. And so now they know us and we know them, and if something happens and one of us goes to the hospital, we got somebody that we can call, or if somebody needs a casserole or something, I know somebody else here in the parish. I figured after 19 years it was time. So Brian and his wife continued to do their thing, and 3 or 4 more years later, I think he said it was 23 years in that parish. He said, we've been going 23 years. We always came 20 minutes early. We always sat on the last pew. He says, the end of Mass, after 23 years, and they said, go in peace to love and serve the Lord. And we said, thanks be to God. And so my wife and I are getting ready to dash out again before anybody can get to us, and we can be out of that parking lot. And again, Tom says, hey, Brian. Brian says, I turn around. I said, yeah, what is it? We just talked 4 years ago. What is it? And Tom says, hey, I got this CD. Pretend this is a CD. We used to have the CDs back in the 90s, remember? And he says, I listened to this CD this week. It's really good. And when I listened to it, all my faith began to make sense. All these things that I'd heard my whole life began to come together, and it was like a light switch went on in my head. And so I thought, you might like it too. And Brian said, yeah, okay, whatever. And he took it, and he said, I dashed out, and I threw it onto the seat of my truck. And he said, I forgot about that CD all week long. He said, it was Saturday night. I was out checking on one of my horses in the field, and I got into my truck to drive back to my house, and I looked down on the seat of my truck, and there was that stupid CD. And he said, I thought to myself, man, dang. It's Saturday night. Tomorrow's Sunday. Going to go to Mass. Going to get there 20 minutes early because I got to sit in the same pew. I'm Catholic. I can't sit anywhere else. Tom's going to get there 2 minutes later. He's going to sit in the same place because he's Catholic and he can't sit anywhere else. He's going to look at me. He's going to say, "Hey, Bri, guy, did you listen to that CD, man? What'd you think, dude? Wasn't it great? Wasn't it awesome?" I'm going to have to lie, pretend like I listened to it. If I lie, I'm going to have to stay afterward for confession, and I'm not going to stay after for confession. Heavens. All right, well, I got 3 minutes to get back to the house, and so he said I stuck it into my CD player, back when we used to have those, stuck it into my CD player in the truck, and I listened to the first 3 minutes, and it was this Australian guy, Matthew Kelly, and it was a CD called The 7 Pillars of Catholic Spirituality. He said, I listened to the first 3 minutes, and I got back to my house, and I sat in my driveway, and I sat in the driveway for the full 60 minutes of that CD. Listened to the whole thing. He said it was fantastic. And all of a sudden, some parts of my life and my faith began to come together and to click. And I thought, that was a really good CD. So I went to church the next day. I went to Mass, and I took the CD, and I said, "Hey, Tom, thanks for sharing this CD. You're right. It was really pretty good. Appreciate it. Talk to you in 4 more years." Tom said, "Wouldn't you know it? Did you see the bulletin? Matthew's going to be here in Dallas, Fort Worth, speaking at a men's conference in a few weeks. You and I should get some guys together and go." Brian said, "Yeah, okay, that sounds pretty good." So they got 8 of their friends, and the 10 of them went to that men's conference, and Matthew, at that men's event, he said, "Did you know that 32% of the people who you'll see at Easter Mass, it's the only time all year that you'll see them? 32% of the people that you'll see at Easter Mass 6 weeks from tomorrow, it's the only time all year that you'll see them." And Matthew said, wouldn't it be fascinating, wouldn't it be interesting if instead of going, "What are you doing in my pew, man? Who are you? Why are you here? Get out of my pew. My wife and I sit there every week so that we can have it reserved for Easter. You're in my seat. That better not be your truck out in my parking space." I tell you what, if you'll get up and move somewhere else, we'll sit down and we'll just leave it alone, okay? Happy Easter. Instead of doing that, what would happen if instead of doing that, we went up to him and said, "Hey, I'm really glad to see you at Mass today. Here's a free book. It's a book shown to really help people and inspire them and give them a booster shot of faith. Here's a free book. Happy Easter. Sit wherever you like." What would happen if we did that? Brian said we were at that men's conference. We heard Matthew say that, and we thought, that's a great idea. Our parish could really use that because our parish is cold. It's like Presbyterian cold, man. It was cold. And so we went back to our priest, and we said, "Hey, Father, we've got an idea. What if we buy books to give to everybody who comes to Mass at Easter?" And Father said, "That's a great idea. I love that idea. Who's going to pay for it?" And they said, "Well, that's why we came to meet with you, Father." And he said, "That's why I'm asking you, who's going to pay for it?" And they said, "Well, the books are only $1 each." And so, we looked at each other, and we thought, the 10 of us could split it all up. And so we each did that. And over the last 4 years or so, Brian and his friends have given away 8,200 books at their parish at Christmas and Easter each year. Not only that, Brian has organized a number of different speakers and events in his parish to try to help share the faith and the beauty of Catholicism and the genius of Catholicism and the majesty of Catholicism with other people in the parish and in the area. And 2 years ago, stay with me, 2 years ago, Brian's wife became the director of religious education in that parish. All because of one CD. Didn't have a label on it. It wasn't the official copy. It was pirated. It was illegally copied. And it was shared. All because of one pirated, contraband, illegal CD. Brian's life changed. Evangelization, friends, it's one beggar telling another beggar where to find bread. This helped me. I think it might help you. We gave you these books today from Dynamic Catholic. I think it's the best book Matthew ever wrote. He doesn't. He has the right to be wrong, and that's okay. We gave you these so that, A, if you haven't read it, you can read it. But B, what would happen, stay with me, gentlemen, what would happen if for the next 40 days, 42 days between now and Easter, you prayed each morning for your friend, your family member that you called to mind a minute ago, and you said, Lord, I love Tommy very much, and I know you love him too. And he could really use a booster shot of faith. Lord, he's going through a divorce after being married for 32 years. He could really use a booster shot of faith, and I pray that you would give that to him, and if I could be of help in that, Lord, I pray that you would use me. What would happen if you did that, and the next time you saw Tommy, you said, hey, Tommy, really good book, short, 40 chapters. Each chapter is only like 3 pages. Even you can read it, Tommy. And I just finished it. It was really helpful to me. It really inspired me, and I think it inspire you too. Evangelization begins with prayer, and it often continues with sharing a free resource with somebody else. Number 3, it begins with prayer. It's often shared through a resource. Number 3, it can, often does, stay with me, lead to invitation. Invitation. So what I'm about to share with you is a story, and I realize it's a very extreme story. It's a radical story. But it's also a true story because it's our family story. So, as Father Chris mentioned, in July 1 of 2007, I stepped down from my role as the pastor of a marvelous group of people in suburban Atlanta. And I spent the next 6 months discerning to be sure that I really did want to become Catholic. Because any of you that have ever also pastored a large Methodist congregation, you realize that if you're a Methodist pastor who becomes Catholic, the bridge blows up behind you, right? And there ain't no going back. So I used those 6 months to make sure, and then I came into the church in January, and then my older daughter, Sarah Ann, graduated from high school, and she went off to college. She went off to college about 2.5 hours northeast of us in Greenville, South Carolina. And Anita and I underestimated what that was going to be like for her. Because Sarah Ann she's a very petite little gal, and she's a very interior little gal, and she's not real socially outgoing. She was a little socially awkward. She spent most of her time studying and reading. She loved to read books. She liked to write. She loved poetry, and she kept to herself. And so we were the only parents in the history of North America that said when our daughter went off to college, we said, hey, please go to some parties. Okay? Skip class, please. Develop a social life. Meet some people, please. Drink a beer. It won't kill you. Only parents ever to do that. So we sent her off, and what we underestimated was our daughter was a PK. She was a PK, not a place kicker. She was a preacher's kid. She was a preacher's kid. And so for all of her life, for 18 years, it had never been a question as to whether she was going to go to church each Sunday. It had never been a question as to where she was going to go to church or who was going to be her pastor. Her mother and I answered that question for her every Sunday for 18 years. So we sent her off to school, and for the first time, Sarah Ann smelled sweet liberty, and she was able to figure out, A, do I want to go to church, and B, if I do, where do I want to go, and C, who's going to be my pastor? And so she tried this Bible study, and she tried this campus group, and she tried this ministry, and she tried this church, and she tried that church, and she tried this church, and she tried that Bible study, and this group, and that ministry, and this ministry, and she never could quite find her spiritual groove at college. And so it's the week before Thanksgiving, her first semester, second or third week in November, she's walking down the hall of the freshman dorm. Coming the other way is a young woman named Elizabeth, the RA, the resident advisor. And Elizabeth, who's a senior, sees my daughter Sarah Ann coming to her, and she says, hey, Sarah Ann, I haven't seen you in a while. How are you doing? Sarah Ann said, pretty good. Thanks for asking. Elizabeth says, it's your first semester. Being away from home can be hard. Classes can be hard. College is not easy. Are you passing everything? Are you doing okay academically? Are you going to be back next semester? Sarah Ann says, yeah, I like most of my classes pretty well. I'm going to pass everything. I think I'm even going to make an A in English. So, yeah, academically, I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for asking. Elizabeth says, being away from home and having to make new friends, that's hard. And I know you're kind of a little quiet. Hey, do you have some friends? Do you feel connected? Does this school feel like home to you now? Does it feel like family? Do you have kind of a web of support? How you doing? Sarah said, yeah, I joined a sorority, and I've got 3 or 4 other gals there that I'm really close to that I'm going to live with next year. And so I'm doing well. I feel really pleased that I'm here. Thanks for asking. Elizabeth says, I remember you told me that you're a PK, that your dad's a pastor, and your faith is really important to you. Have you found your church home? Have you found your spiritual groove here at school yet? Sarah says, well, no, not really. I tried this campus ministry, and I tried that small group, and I tried this Bible study, and I tried this church, and I tried that church, and I've tried a bunch of different stuff, but I hadn't quite found my home here spiritually at school. But thanks for asking. Elizabeth says, would you like to go to Mass with me? Sarah says, I know my dad's thinking about becoming Catholic, and I've been to Mass some. Sure, that sounds great. When is it? Elizabeth says it's Sundays at 5 p.m. Sarah says, that's perfect, because I wake up at 4:30. And Elizabeth says, you know what, I'll come by and I'll get you. I'll come by your dorm at about 5 till 5 because we're college students and we don't want to be early. I'll come by. We'll walk across campus to the old Baptist chapel. How sweet is that, the old Baptist chapel? We'll go to Mass. Father Pat comes from the Franciscan parish here in Greenville, and he comes, big burly guy, and he celebrates Mass. He's a marvelous preacher. You're gonna love him. And there'll be about 50 of us students there. We'll have Mass together, and then after Mass, I'll take you. We'll go get something to eat. Sarah says, that sounds great. Thanks for asking. Elizabeth is a woman of her word. She comes by at 5 minutes till 5. She picks up Sarah Ann. They walk across campus. They go to the Baptist chapel. They go to Mass. And Sarah Ann doesn't even quite make it to the gospel reading. I can't remember exactly the readings that day, but I think the New Testament reading before the gospel reading was from St. Paul's letter to the Galatians. And Sarah Ann, again, she's a very interior, literary kind of kid. She's there, and she hears those words coming from Galatians, and all of a sudden, the switch flips in her head, and she goes, these are the same words that Dad's hearing at Mass in Atlanta. These are the same words that our friend Father Stephen is using at Mass in Washington, D.C. These are the same words that our friend Miss Betsy, who's the director of religious education at a parish in Boston, is using. I get it. One holy Catholic apostolic church. I get it. She comes home from Mass after that she and Elizabeth got something to eat. She gets on her phone. She calls Anita and me, and she says, hey, Mom, Dad, I think I want to become Catholic. And we go, sweetie, slow down. You've been to half of a Mass. You're a half-Mass Catholic. Just slow down for a second. Calm this train down. I said, keep going to Mass. Keep going to Mass for the rest of the school year, and if you still like it, when you come home at the end of the school year, you can go to Mass with me in the summer. And then after summer's over, if you still think you want to become Catholic, then go meet with Father Pat and tell him. And so Sarah Ann, who's not like her sister, Sarah Ann actually did what I asked her to do. And so she did that, and she goes back the next fall to school, and she meets with Father Pat. She says, Father Pat, I think I'd like to become Catholic. He says, fantastic. I'm not used to this, but I'll put you into the RCIA group at my parish. And so you can imagine 10 or 11 years ago what it felt like in Atlanta as Anita and I packed our car and drove 2.5 hours northeast up Interstate 85 to Greenville, South Carolina on Easter weekend. And we snuck in and we sat toward the back of St. Anthony of Padua Parish there in Greenville for Easter Vigil Mass, and we watched and observed as our little girl, an 18-year-old woman, became Catholic. all because of one conversation in a dorm hall. As you think about that conversation in a dorm hall, stay with me, gentlemen. As you think about that conversation in the dorm hall, think about what Elizabeth did and did not do with my daughter. Notice what Elizabeth did. She walked up and she said, "Hey, Saran, how are you doing? How's school? You got friends? You feeling okay here? How's your life?" She cared about my daughter. Elizabeth didn't come up and go, "Hey, here's a book. You better read it or you're going to hell. And I'm going to get on your Twitter account and just start bombing you with all kinds of truth from papal encyclicals for the next 6 months until you decide not to go to hell and become Catholic." And I got scalps on my belt here, and Pope Francis said I better get one more scalp on my belt before Easter or else I'm going to go to hell. No, she came up to my daughter and she said, "Hey, how are you? I care about you. How's your life? Is your life working? Can I help?" Stay with me. In other words, she loved my daughter. It was about my daughter. It wasn't about Elizabeth and her agenda and what she needed to do for my daughter. It was about my daughter. She loved my daughter. And then when she said, "Hey, would you like to go to Mass with me?" When she said, "Did you find your spiritual home here at school?" And my daughter says, "No, I hadn't quite found it yet." Notice what Elizabeth didn't say. "Well, I'll pray a novena for you." You know, there's a bulletin board over there in the student center. You ought to go check it out. It's got all kinds of religious stuff on it. Surely you can find something. Let me know how that goes. I'll be praying for you. No. When my daughter said, "You know what? I hadn't been able to find my spiritual home here at school," what did Elizabeth do? She said, "Hey, would you like to go to Mass with me? And how about I get you, we go together, and afterward, I'll take you to get something to eat." She first of all loved my daughter, and then she showed hospitality to my daughter. Love and hospitality, not social media and argumentation. Love and hospitality, somebody who cared about my daughter and went out of her way and inconvenienced herself not only to have a conversation to care, but then to say, "Would you go with me? I'll come get you. We'll sit together, and then I'll take you to get something to eat." She loved, welcomed, hosted, and celebrated my daughter home into the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. So, gentlemen, what I want to propose to you today used to not be particularly radical. For the first 400 years of Christian history, which is all Catholic, by the way, for the first 400 years of Christian history, you know what early Christians were known for? They weren't known for being right. They were known for being loving, for being radical communities of love and hospitality. In the Roman Empire, where life was nasty, brutish, and short, they didn't have abortion clinics. Women just, if they didn't want their child, would give birth and then place the child, what they called exposure, leave the child exposed to the elements and to nature, and the child would wither and die. And the Christians were the ones who were known to come along and say, "We'll take that child in. We'll raise that child. We'll prepare a place for that child. We'll welcome that child and make that child a part of our family." Christians were known as the people who welcomed the strangers, not people who locked their doors and played defense and said, "Oh, if you're a stranger, we're going to need to see some ID and maybe an iris scan." No, we were known when people were traveling and people needed a place, Christians said, "You are welcome here." It's radical in this culture that you and I live in to say this. But wouldn't it be great? I suspect if you took a Gallup poll today and said, what are the 2 words that best describe the Catholic Church in America today, the 2 words that are most often mentioned by Americans would not be, "Hey, you know what? When I think of Catholics, I think of love and hospitality." Wouldn't it be great if those were the 2 words that came to mind? Don't wait on your bishop to do something about that. Don't wait on your priest to do something about that. You and I are called to do something about that. That's the whole point of a men's conference and the whole point of St. Joseph, is inviting us into a life of simple mission, not to go out and change the world, but to change our little corner of the world with one person whose life you care about and love about, and help them to encounter the grace, the love, and the hope of Catholicism and of Jesus Christ, and give them an injection shot of faith, a booster shot of faith. So what would happen, guys? Stay with me. 42 days till Easter. What would happen if for the next 42 days, each morning you got up and you prayed and you said, "Lord, I love Tommy very much, and I know you love him even more than I do because you made him in your image. And he could really use a booster shot of faith right now, Lord, getting a divorce after 32 years. And I pray, Lord, that you'd give him that booster shot of faith, that you would silence his cell phone, and that you would give him a booster shot of faith and help him to discover that, and if I can be useful in that you would let me to do that as well. If you did that for 42 days, what would happen? I can't guarantee you what's going to happen in Tommy's life. I'll be honest with you, I can't guarantee you. I can't guarantee you what's going to happen in Tommy's life, but I can guarantee you what's going to happen in your life. Your life's going to change from the inside out, because all of a sudden, as you begin to share your faith through prayer with somebody else, you're going to begin to have stay with me, you're going to have a softer heart. You're going to begin to see the people around you, and you're going to realize that you don't need to go someplace else to be on the mission field. You're living in the mission field in your home, in your workplace, and in your neighborhood. There's people all around you, people that you know, people who love you and trust you, who could really use a little booster shot of faith. Somebody who's struggling with an illness, somebody whose spouse is struggling, somebody who just lost his job, somebody who's got COVID, somebody whose kid is in rehab. The people around you go, wow, God, thank you. All of a sudden, your heart's going to be softened. You're going to see the people around you differently, and you're going to become a missionary. And then what would happen if you just stay focused on the one? You don't try to change everybody. Stay focused on the one. And you go to Tommy and you say, Tommy, man, this book really helped me, really inspired me. I think it'd be helpful to you too. And then what would happen if when we get to Palm Sunday, listen, when we get to Palm Sunday, on the Saturday before Palm Sunday, you said, Lord, I'm praying for Tommy, and next Sunday's Easter. Would you like me to invite Tommy to go to Easter Mass with me? God's answer may be, no, it's not the right time. And that's cool. But God may say, yeah, and give you a little nudge and say, I really would like you to do that. What would happen if you went to Tommy and you said, hey, man, next Sunday's Easter. My favorite Mass of the year, man. St. George, woo, baby. It's decked out. The homily's going to be out of this world. The music's going to be fantastic. There's going to be Easter lilies. It's just a great Easter Mass. Could I come by and pick you up? Go to Mass with me, and then maybe after Mass, we'll go grab something to eat. I'll buy. Would you like to go to Mass with me? Tommy may say, nah, not my cup of tea, man. Thanks for the ask. Still haven't got around to reading the book, but I appreciate you talking about it with me. But Tommy also might say, wow, that's really nice of you, man. I've been thinking about going to Mass for about 6 years, and I just couldn't quite work up the nerve, and I didn't want to go by myself. That sounds great. Yeah, I'd love to go. I can't guarantee you what's going to happen in Tommy's life and how he's going to respond. But I can tell you that your life will be very, very different, because you're going to discover the power of the law of the harvest, that as you begin to give your faith away, God's going to build and grow and multiply that faith inside of you to levels you've never experienced before. And better yet, when 350 of us who are gathered here today, and however many hundreds or thousands are gathered online watching, when each one of us, again, we're not each going out trying to get a bunch, we're each just trying to go to one. Remember Helen Keller? She said, I'm just one person, but still I am one, and I can do something. When each one of us focuses on one person and we pray for them, and we share a good book, which you just got for free, with somebody else, and then a lot of us invite those people to Easter Mass, slowly but surely the Diocese of Baton Rouge begins to look a little differently. And our parishes look a little bit differently. And hear me, you start to look a little bit more holy. You actually, dare I say it, start to look a little bit more like the pillar of the family, the protector of the church, the terror of demons. Pow. Terror of demons is on your side, guys. It's not time for defense. It's time for offense. God is good. God is good. All the time. God is sweet. Yes, He is. God bless you. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Alan Hunt. My goodness, that was just talk number one, gentlemen.